I know I shouldn't ask, Maren, but I'm desperate.
My name is Maren Ellis. I'm 30 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my father sat down across from me at the loan office where I work in Grand Rapids, Michigan, slid a folded piece of paper across my desk, and said the same 6 words he said to me when I was 14. You know how this works, Maren. Except this time, the paper wasn't a chore chart, it was a number. $61,400. 16 years of my own childhood, itemized and mailed to me like a mortgage statement. What I did with that piece of paper is the reason my little brother hasn't called me since. And to understand why I didn't blink, you have to go back to a kitchen in a small house on Baldwin Street, to a whiteboard on the refrigerator, and to the year I turned 13. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet people finally say the things their families spent decades not saying. My parents were Gary and Carol Ellis. He drove a delivery route for a beverage distributor. She did billing at a dental office. We were not poor. I need you to sit with that because everything that happened after only makes sense once you understand there was money in that house. There just wasn't any for me. The summer I turned 13, my father lost his overtime shifts. Not his job, just the extra hours that paid for the extras. And instead of tightening the belt as a family, my mother stood at the fridge one August evening, uncapped a dry erase marker, and drew 4 columns on a laminated whiteboard she'd bought that afternoon. Dad, Mom, Toby, Maren. She called it the Fair Share Board. Everybody contributes, she said, capping the marker like she'd signed a treaty. You're 13. Time you learned that too. I didn't understand yet that the board could be wiped clean every single month, which meant there would never be a paper trail and never an ending. By September, my column had 3 words on it in her handwriting: food, clothes, supplies. My little brother Toby was 8, too young for a column of his own yet, and some nights I'd split my cafeteria lunch with him under the table when Mom forgot to pack his. I didn't tell anyone that. I was already learning the family rule nobody said out loud. You don't report what happens in this house, you just adjust to it. I want to tell you about the shoes because I think about them more than anything else from that year. My sneakers split at the seam in October, and I taped them with electrical tape from the garage, and I told my gym teacher, Mr. Halloway, that I liked the punk look when he asked, and he laughed, and I walked to the back of the line so he wouldn't hear the tape peeling off the rubber with every step. Here's the part that still gets me. One Tuesday afternoon, our elderly next-door neighbor, Mrs. Odell, paid me $11 to rake a yard that had maybe 4 leaves in it. I counted them. I counted the leaves because some part of me needed to know exactly how much charity I was accepting so I could feel like I'd earned it instead. She caught me counting once from her porch swing, and she didn't say a word. She just went inside and came back out with a second $11 and said, "You missed a spot around back." There was no spot around back. If you've ever had someone quietly feed you without ever once making you say thank you for it, you already know why I think about Mrs. Odell more than I think about my own mother some days. At 14, the arithmetic changed for good, and it happened on a night that should have been ordinary.
We are just so incredibly proud of Maren for overcoming her little problem and finally getting her life together.
Thanksgiving, my grandmother's house, 12 people at the table, and my mother stood up between the turkey and the pie and announced to the whole family, like she was proud of it, that starting December 1st, I would be paying $200 a month for room, board, and the privilege of living in a house I clearly took for granted. My aunt laughed like it was a joke. My father studied his plate. Toby, 9 years old, looked at me like I'd been sentenced to something, because, in a way, I had. That was the moment, not a note taped to a door, but a public announcement over green bean casserole, designed so I couldn't argue without becoming the ungrateful one in front of the whole family. I want you to understand what $200 a month means to a 14-year-old who's legally allowed to work 18 hours a week. It doesn't mean sacrifice, it means impossible. And impossible, I would learn, was the entire point. So I built an economy out of nothing. I tutored 2 neighborhood kids in math for $10 a session. I found a system online for reselling thrifted clothes and ran it out of a shoebox under my bed. I skipped lunch 3 days a week and told anyone who asked that I was trying intermittent fasting, which is a shockingly convincing lie coming from the mouth of a straight A freshman. And every dollar I made outside that house, I split in 2 ways in my head. Half for the board, half hidden in a sock for Toby's school trip that my mother had already said was an extra. Here's where the story turns, because I need you to know the system almost missed me completely. I finally worked up the nerve to tell a teacher, not a counselor who noticed, just my English teacher, Mrs. Patel, after class one day. And I undersold it so badly, so wrapped in jokes and shrugs, that she'd just told me to talk to your parents about it and sent me home. The one time I opened the door myself, it swung shut in my face. I remember walking home that day and deciding with a kind of cold, 14-year-old certainty that I was completely on my own and that no one was coming. If that's ever happened to you, reaching out and getting nothing back, stay with me, because what happened 3 weeks later changed everything, and it wasn't me who caused it this time. I fainted, not at school, at the pizza place where I'd started working the counter on weekends, off the books, cash only. Low blood sugar, the manager said, calling it in like a workplace incident because legally he had to. And because I was a minor working without a permit, that incident report didn't stay quiet. It got forwarded. And 2 days later, a caseworker named Renee Castillo called our house and said she'd be doing a home visit that Thursday. You have never seen a house transform so fast. My mother wiped the Fair Share board completely clean Wednesday night. Every column, every number, gone in one pass of a paper towel, because there was nothing to subpoena if there was nothing written down. She bought groceries she'd never buy. She put a bowl of fruit on the counter like we were a catalog family. And it almost worked, right up until Renee Castillo asked to speak to Toby alone in the backyard, and my 10-year-old brother, who didn't yet understand the family rule about silence, told her about the whiteboard, described the 4 columns from memory, number for number, because kids remember everything you think they're too young to notice. That's the twist nobody in my family saw coming. It wasn't the girl who'd been protecting the secret for 2 years who broke it open. It was the boy I'd been quietly feeding under the table. What followed was a case plan signed at a folding table in a beige county office. Food, clothing, school costs, no rent, no fees, no charges to a minor child. My mother's signature pressed so hard into the paper it nearly tore through. Compliance came, but warmth never did. Receipts got left on the counter like little accusations. New clothes arrived in bags with the price tags still stapled inside, so I'd know exactly what I cost. Toby and I never talked about what he told Renee Castillo. We didn't have to. From that day on, there was a kind of quiet treaty between us that our parents never noticed. I kept feeding him, and he never once let them isolate me the way they'd planned to. I made it to 18. I want to skip the gray middle years the way I lived them. Head down, grades up, a bank account in my name that I fed every week like a garden. Community college at night, a job at a credit union by day, and by 22, a real position, then a promotion, then a small rental of my own with a full pantry and no whiteboard anywhere in it. The day I turned 18, my mother handed me a printed spreadsheet instead of a whiteboard photo. She'd graduated formats, and the total at the bottom said $9,200. I didn't argue with her. I went to the bank the next morning, withdrew the number in cash, mostly in coins from a jar I'd been keeping for exactly this purpose, and I counted it out on the kitchen table in front of her, $1 at a time, out loud, for 11 minutes. Then I picked up my bag and walked out the front door, and I have never once lived under that roof again. 16 years later, that folded piece of paper landed on my desk at the loan office, $61,400. Not because I owed it, because my father's health had failed and their savings hadn't, and my mother had decided one more time that motherhood was a loan with interest. The ask underneath it was simpler than the number. Co-sign a business loan to save the family beverage route my father could no longer drive. I want to be honest with you about the 4 seconds where I almost said yes, because some tired 14-year-old part of me still wanted, just once, to be told I was good enough to be paid back for. Instead, I did what 16 years in finance had actually taught me to do. I pulled together a real folder, a hardship refinance program through their credit union, a disability benefits application my father qualified for and had never filed, a payment plan the beverage company had offered small route drivers and quietly never advertised. Not a check, a path, and I slid that folder across the desk instead of a signature. My mother looked at it the way you'd look at a foreign coin. "That's paperwork," she said. "We're your parents." I know, and I'm not buying my way back into a family with a debt I never actually owed. I already paid that account off once, at your kitchen table, in quarters. It's closed. She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor, and she walked out of the office I'd spent 16 years earning the right to sit behind. My father sat 1 second longer, folded the folder into his jacket the way a man hides something he's ashamed to need, and said quiet enough that only I could hear it, "Thank you, Maren." Toby called that Sunday, not my mother's version of the story, not Dean's furious voicemails from some other family's telling, just Toby, the way he's called every Sunday since we were kids, and he said 4 words before anything else: "I'm proud of you." Some ledgers close with silence, ours closed with a phone call, and I'll take that trade every single time. If this story pulled something loose in you, if you've ever been the capable one, the fine one, the kid nobody thought to check on, do one thing for me before you go. Hit follow, subscribe if you haven't, and tell me in the comments the moment you finally closed an account someone else opened without asking you. My mother still keeps her spreadsheets, I hear. Somewhere there's a column with my name on it, still accruing in a file nobody reads anymore. It doesn't run in my house. My pantry has no prices taped inside the cabinets, and the porch light stays on because it's my porch, and I'm glad every single month to pay that bill and no other. That's the whole lesson, if you need it stated plainly. You are allowed to close an account you never agreed to open. Walking away from a debt you never owed isn't abandoning your family. It's refusing to abandon yourself. And no ledger on this earth outweighs a full pantry with nobody's price tags in it.